Hello and welcome to this Monday's weekly market briefing. We've got lots to talk about, but firstly, Elon Musk does now release his new AI chatbot Grok in a bid to take on the leading AI chatbot ChatGPT, as well as that Antony Blinken does tell Mahmoud Abbas that the Palestinian Authority could play a central role in the governance of Gaza following Israel's kind of invasion now into Gaza, as well as that Trump does now lead in the 2024 election polls, and this comes as doubts do mount over Biden's management of the economy. As well as that, we've got lots to talk about on the charts, also with lots happening on the economic calendar. We'll come to that near the end, so make sure you stay around till you see that. Before we get straight into it, make sure to subscribe. But yes, the first article to talk about is Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup XAI has released its first AI model, and this comes as the tech billionaire looks to take on OpenAI, Google and Meta. This could be done through a sassy chatbot that is tightly integrated with X, and this does seem to be the plan by Elon Musk to kind of push for greater dominance in the AI industry. As we do know, the AI industry, especially within this kind of chat box kind of system and infrastructure, we have seen great growth in that sector following ChatGPT's release, with many people relying on it now for their functions with work, at school, and other sorts of things as well, of course, and it's proved highly effective. Obviously, a week ago or two, we did talk about the revenues that were coming into ChatGPT. They were great, and the potential for growth within that obviously is great as well. Now, the new AI system Grok would have real-time access to information from X, and this would give a massive advantage over other models which have largely relied on older archives of internet data. And Musk commented on the quirks of the new AI chatbot, saying it loves sarcasm and responds with a little humour, with this personality allowing it to stand out in the market. Of course, as this market does seem to become more and more saturated as more people have jumped on the bandwagon, seeing the success that ChatGPT has led in the industry. Interestingly enough, it was Elon Musk which did co-found OpenAI, which did then produce ChatGPT, but obviously he did leave that before it was released. So it's interesting to see him now getting back into that market. We do know that last week he did talk to Rishi Sunak about the possibilities of AI taking over all industries of work within the future. Quite pessimistic or apocalyptic kind of outlook at the future of the world. But this has been taken as mixed signals by the markets and other leaders of the world. So it's interesting to see him now trying to make his foot in the space with his new AI chatbot Grok. And Musk is now looking to the growing AI companies as a new tech revolution, with billions of dollars now flooding into the industry following OpenAI's release of ChatGPT nearly a year ago. That said, the chatbot that Grok is still in very early testing versions, so we can't necessarily say it's ready to go, it's on the market. It still is in that very early testing stage. And Musk said last week, of course, as I just mentioned, that eventually AI will be able to do everything and render human work obsolete. So quite a pessimistic kind of message there. So that's something to note as well. And despite being created in just a few months, Musk claims that Grok's capabilities rival the latest models from Meta, obviously, with Meta's latest AI model being ChatGPT 4, and that's already been embedded into apps by partner companies as well. So it'd be interesting to see how Grok does get integrated into other apps as well. We do know that it has that natural access to Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays into its ability to kind of generate the most accurate kind of responses and that sort of thing. Now, XAI is believed to be training its technology using its cloud computing platform, and Grok will cost $16 a month, with users of X being able to now apply to try out Grok. Something to note as well, which could be interesting to kind of talk about and ponder, is the fact that by Elon Musk acquiring Twitter, turning it into X, he has created this kind of knowledge platform, real-time updating knowledge platform, which is going to be able to be used to train his new AI chatbot for the better, of course. So whilst we did talk about last week, Elon Musk's struggles with the valuations now of X. It'll be interesting to see how this might equal it out for him in terms of losses and revenues, of course. So that's definitely something to note, and definitely keep your eyes on this, as the AI space does continue to change every single day. Next to talk about, though, is Antony Blinken, obviously the US Secretary of Defense now, and the US Secretary of State. Now, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, told the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, that the US saw the Palestinian Authority as playing a central role in any post-Hamas government in Gaza. And this comes obviously as the Israeli military continues their bombardment of Gaza and operations inside the enclave ensue. Now, we know, fighting within the streets of Gaza has been taking place to a great extent for the past week, with the bombardment of Gaza continuing still. And this is obviously all following the October 7 terrorist attacks by Hamas, where they broke through the gates of Gaza and infiltrated Israeli proper and massacred over 1,000 civilians, with that taking 200 hostages as well. And therefore we have now seen this kind of response by Israel, which has now been condemned actually by most of the world, it does seem. And so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of gets worked out as the US does try to mediate in situations, taking the side of Israel, but also at the same time constantly making claims and calls for a temporary ceasefire in the conflict. Now, Abbas did say that the Palestinian Authority would only assume power in Gaza as a part of a comprehensive political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and Blinken, who has also held meetings in Tel Aviv and the Jordanian capital of Amman in recent days, is on his second trip to the region since Israel declared war on Hamas. Now, when he was on his trip last, obviously due to flaring tensions within the areas, he wasn't actually able to meet many of the nations which he looked to kind of talk with and mediate with. I believe one of those was Jordan, so it is interesting to see how now he is able to interact with those individuals whilst the ground operations within Gaza does ensue. Now, Israel and the US have rejected calls for a ceasefire in the conflict, with Abbas during his meeting with Blinken asking for an immediate halt to the devastating Israeli war on Gaza, was his words. Now, Palestinian officials are reporting deaths of over 9,000 deaths, and the Israeli death count does sit at that 1,400 figure. But obviously casualties have increased following their invasion into Gaza, and the military deaths as a result of that. Those figures are more so based around civilian casualties, of course. Now, the IDF has encircled Gaza City, with fierce street battles now taking place. And obviously with that comes increased humanitarian risks, as the encirclement of a city does reduce any supplies of any aid within the enclave, and as well as that, any collateral damage from the conflict obviously will have great humanitarian impacts. Now, humanitarian supplies are running low in Gaza, and only a trickle of aid is flowing through that Rafah crossing, with NGOs saying it is not nearly enough. And that Rafah crossing is obviously between Egypt and And Gaza, where we have seen certain foreign nationals and certain civilian casualties being evacuated recently across to the Egyptian side, but not too many, of course. Now, officials in Egypt, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates are calling for a ceasefire, but Netanyahu has ruled out only even a temporary ceasefire, and that is until all hostages are released. Now, Blinken has proposed localized humanitarian pauses, however, and that would be in a bid to help get Western kind of nationals out of the Gaza enclave as, the fighting does continue. And the talks in Washington now are more focused on who will run Gaza after Hamas is destroyed, as it is believed now that with the operation ensuing, the encirclement of Gaza City, it is likely that we will see the destruction of Hamas, as long as we don't see any foreign powers get involved also. Now, one idea being discussed is the possibility of an interim government being run by Arab states or even the UN before a revitalized Palestinian Authority takes over. As the Palestinian Authority has had its own issues with corruption and just weak governance, which is putting off many, leaders from encouraging that kind of authority taking over. With Blinken stressing his commitment to the establishment of a legitimate Palestinian state, so one not fought through and achieved through terrorism, but rather through legal means, and in this case, likely through the Palestinian Authority. So this is definitely something to keep note of, as obviously the increased tensions are greatly affecting, safe haven assets such as oil and gold in particular, which we'll come to on the charts near the end, so make sure you stay around to see that. But next to talk about, of course, is Trump, which is now leading in those 2024 polls, with 2 polls on Sunday showing Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump as concerns over the economy and splits within the Democratic Party mount. Now, this comes as the war in Israel drags on the president's re-election prospects, as well as his old age comes into question. Now, this is something we've been talking about not too much, but we've been keeping it on our kind of on our agenda, keeping it on our watch, and it does seem that Trump is taking on more and more followers as a result of the conflicts which have ensued, which have taken place whilst under Biden's leadership. Now, obviously, Biden hasn't been personally involved or necessarily the root cause of these issues. However, it's likely that many US civilians will begin to blame these conflicts and the issues which have arisen from them on Biden, such as the conflict in Ukraine, which has also affected oil prices and grain prices and many other commodity prices across the world, as well as obviously the issues with now Israel and Palestine, with certain people, calling, especially on the more left-wing side, calling for a ceasefire and support for, Palestinian civilians, whilst, more individuals on the right call for greater support for Israel. Now, Biden does look to be behind Trump in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states, and this is where elections are really won. These are the swing states where it can go from blue to red or red to blue, and if you do control those battleground states, those swing states, you will win the election, basically, as this is just the way the Electoral College functions within the US. Now, this is as a result of the fueled doubts over his handling of the economy and his old age kick in, as many people are driven mostly on their outlook of the economy in the way that they vote, and most of their outlook on the economy is driven by the level of inflation and especially oil prices, which the US has struggled with Biden obviously having to release strategic reserves of oil to settle the price issues within the US. Now, voters are thinking that they would be better off financially if Trump does win in 2024, and Biden also faces widespread discontent over a range of issues such as national security, with issues on the border as well as in foreign seas as well, with Israel and Gaza, and the protests which have taken place within the US as a result of that, and the issues with Russia in Ukraine mounting on top of that. Now, voters said they trusted Trump over Biden on the economy by 59% to 37% respectively, which is the widest gap on any issue. And remember, the economy is really what drives voters in the way that they vote, so that difference is extremely important to note when we look at predicting and looking forward to that 2024 election. Now, Trump got better marks on the economy regardless of gender, age, education or income level. This is really significant, of course, and really does put the worries in for the Democratic Party in terms of being re-elected. And if the election were held now, Biden would lose to Trump by margins of 3 to 10 percentage points in the key states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. And these are obviously those swing states. And this is dangerous for Biden since he carried all of these states in 2020. And, to many Trumpists and right-wingers, this was seen as a close election, or at least a fraud, and therefore the fact that Trump would take most of these states when Biden took all of them within 2020, that shows great risks to Biden's presidency as he does go for that re-election bid. Now, Biden's also seen the Democratic Party split over the Israeli conflict, pulling him down further. As we know, many progressive Democrats are calling for that ceasefire and greater support for Palestine, actually, whilst more on the right side of the Democratic Party do call for that support for Israel, and Biden would generally fall on that more right-wing side of the party. Now, 2/3 of the electorate have indicated that the country is heading in the wrong direction. Now, that's a significant number of people, obviously, and is extremely worrying for Democrats if they're looking to take hold and win this next election. And his lead among Hispanic voters has dropped significantly, as well as in urban areas as well. Now, it is up to Biden, obviously, to unite the Democrats around Israel and settle the economy in order to win the 2024 presidential election. So definitely keep your eyes on this, as it will affect US markets and just markets worldwide as people price in the different presidencies, and also look at levels of stability, which may, take place as a result of having a clear winner or not. So definitely keep your eyes on this. But next to talk about, of course, is the charts, where we have lots happening there. Now, on US indices, we have pushed up into this higher area of liquidity, and this is following strong bullish momentum from last week, which is generally shown by a more likely dovish response now from the Fed. And this is likely driven by not only the Fed's interest rate decision last week, where rates were kept where they were and rhetoric seemed more dovish from Jerome Powell, but also in relation to NFP data on Friday, which caused US indices to push higher and into this area of liquidity and resistance as a result of the NFP figure coming in below expectations, with unemployment higher than expected, which would seem counterintuitive to then see US indices rising. But the point is people now expect more of a dovish response by the Fed in lowering interest rates sooner, as a result of seeing that the economy isn't as resistant as was expected, as it was generally seen before this data release, that the US economy is very strong and is a bright spot within the world economy, therefore has greater breathing room in terms of lifting rates further. So that's something to note on US indices. The same is to be said on the dollar, but in the inverse. So because of that NFP data last week showing that the US economy wasn't doing as well as expected, and it wasn't being as resistant as many people had kind of hoped, or at least that the Fed had presumed, this is creating that kind of more bearish momentum to the downside for the dollar, once again dropping below this bearish kind of trend line, which we did break above and start to make moves to the upside. But following that data release, we have fallen to the downside, reaching this bottom fib extension. So definitely look to see where the dollar could go from here. We have now broken below into the oversold territory on the RSI, so quite possibly we'll see a reaction to the upside now going into this week. So definitely keep your eyes on that. Next to talk about though is the Euro USD. Now, following obviously the dollar's fall on Friday, we have seen Euro USD punch up, break above this strong area of resistance which we had found on Euro USD, and has pushed into this kind of light area of liquidity on the charts. So significant bullish momentum on Euro USD coming into this week. But once again, similar to the dollar, mirroring that, we could be expecting retracement before any moves higher on Euro USD. So definitely keep your eyes on that, as we may now be at the top. As we may now be nearing the top of that kind of resistance line, I guess, resistance trend line, I guess you could say, on the chart. So definitely keep your eyes on that. But also on pound yen, we've seen significant bullish momentum breaking above this resistance trend line that we did see, that acted as a bullish support line kind of for price, but now is seemingly acting as a kind of resistance trend line. But we have now broken above that area, so significant bullish momentum to the upside for the pound. So definitely keep your eyes on that as price does begin to shape up. Next to talk about though is USD/JPY, which has broken below this 78.6% Fibonacci area. Generally, we do say that the 78.6% Fibonacci area is the last kind of Fibonacci area which price could respond to in a bullish manner from. Therefore, breaking below it's quite significant, as it does risk further movement to the downside. So definitely keep your eyes on that, following NFP data last week pushing the dollar lower. We've seen great liquidity on USD/JPY recently, so this is definitely something to note for high risk but high reward opportunities. Next to talk about though is Bitcoin, which is forming a really significant bearish divergence. Obviously, following high levels of Bitcoin ETF speculation, we saw significant bullish momentum to the upside, but we did end up forming a range where price failed to really make any moves to the upside. We were seeing slow movements to the upside, as you can see here from this kind of trend line, but that said, really failing to break above this area of resistance, and therefore we were kind of talking about the possibilities of a fall to the downside. Now, what we're seeing on the RSI with a clear divergence is really signaling to us that there's a very likely retracement that's coming for Bitcoin, as if we're failing to make any moves to the upside despite this kind of false breakout from this range, then it's likely that we'll see a move to the downside, and a significant one also. So definitely keep your eyes on that, as we really do fail to break above the 35,000 mark. So definitely keep your eyes on that. But next to talk about is gold, which is staying still despite NFP data. It does seem that gold is being pushed greatly now by the Israeli-Hamas conflict. So that's the real key thing to note, as we have now proven to ourselves that following all this data release by the Fed and US kind of figures coming out last week, we have seen that it does seem that Israel-Hamas conflict is far more significant than US monetary policy to gold at the moment. So that's the thing to keep note of in relation to trading gold at the moment. Next to talk about though is oil, which is nearing that $80 a barrel mark. It hasn't quite reached it on US oil, so that's definitely the area to be noting as an key area of significance and psychological level on oil. Obviously, we're literally millimeters away, but that's just a key level I wanted to note for you guys on US oil. But that's all to talk about on the charts. Lastly to talk about, of course, is what's coming up this week on the economic calendar, with lots of data coming out. Now, we've firstly got the Aussie interest rate decision, so definitely keep your eyes on that if you're trading any AU pairs. As well as that, we've got German inflation rate coming out, so definitely keep your eyes on that, as well as 2 Jerome Powell speeches coming out with Chinese inflation rate as well, and UK GDP growth rate, and just the plain and simple GDP 3-month average, as well as that we have new Chinese yuan loans as well as the ECB's President Lagarde's speech. So it'll be interesting to see her kind of speeches, as well as Jerome Powell's speeches in response to data which came out last week from the Euro markets and US markets, as well as that we do have the US consumer confidence figure coming out as well. So lots of data to note that's coming out this week. Definitely keep your eyes on that. I think we've covered a lot on the charts also, and lots to cover on the articles as well. Hope you have a great trading week, but that's all from us at Wildwood Capital. Have a great one. See you later.